Greetings, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Metal Command podcast. And I'm glad to be back and in full force. And as many of you may or may not remember, I did a video. I actually did a podcast about Marc Lopes and why I thought he was such a great addition to Metal Church and why I think he was going to be a perfect fit for them. Well, guess what? Marc is now, he came on my show. You are now going to get to see an interview with myself and Marc Lopes, who sings not only for Ross the Boss's band, which, by the way, has a new compilation out. He also sings in Metal Church, obviously, and they have an album coming out. So with that being said, check it out. This is the interview with myself and Marc Lopes. He was a really nice guy, really cool dude to talk to. And with that being said, check it out. So, Marc, it's great to have you on the Metal Command show.
Thanks for having me.
I'm definitely a big fan of your vocals, and obviously we got a new Ross the Boss album coming out. We have a new Metal Church album coming out, and you've been with Ross the Boss for quite a bit. And actually, that's where I first heard you sing. Mm-hmm. And let's touch on that first, since that's the album that's coming out, sooner. The new Ross the Boss album, again, I think is very, very good. It really kind of picks up where the last album left off. And talk about that new release, the new Ross the Boss album coming out.
Well, the new one, meaning the compilation of the stuff that, I mean, it was kind of like, I think it just represents, the end of that era of of that material of those four records, and then going into something totally into another era of the band. And I think it definitely encompasses the wide range of things that have happened with him over the last 15 years of that solo stuff. So yes, so I actually designed the packaging for it, and that was kind of like the whole concept of trying to encompass all four records into the packaging of it, and so much love and respect to that. I was glad he picked the material, he went over it with me, and I was like, yeah, it's great, because I was very flattered that on the albums that I was on, that he picked material that I had a lot of input on. So that was very, very flattering that he picked the tunes to represent that stuff. So,
Sure.
I'm glad to be such a heavy part of that era of the band as well,
Yeah, and the song "Maiden of Shadows," I believe, was written by my buddy Stu.
Yep.
So
we wrote that one. Yep.
So Stu and I actually did some music together. So I remember when I first heard that, I didn't know Stu, really helped write it. I'm like, this sounds like something Stu Marshall would write, or something Death Dealer would put out. And then all of a sudden I talked to him one day, and he goes, "Oh yeah, I helped write that song." And I'm like, "Really? Yep. That's cool." Yeah, but the thing I think about Ross, something that I was thinking about that actually Stu Marshall brought up to me when I had him on my show recently, was that, and I agree with him because it's something I've thought about, is that the one cool thing about Ross the Boss is that his lead guitar playing is so distinguishable from pretty much anybody else. Like when I go to like those Death Dealer releases, for example, and I hear the guitar solos, I can totally tell which lead Ross is playing, because he has that kind of a signature type of playing that's really exclusive to him. And you know what I'm saying? Like it's crazy, but that's kind of how I've always looked at him.
I'm laughing because we had just finished recording a brand new song.
Okay.
And that was a point of contention for one of the new things. So that's funny that you talk about that. But yeah, you're absolutely right, for sure. Yeah, you can definitely tell it's him. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
and
sure.
You know what I mean? It is what it is. He's got his own thing, and that's great. So, but you're right. You can totally tell. I can tell too. I was like, when I've heard some of the Death Dealer stuff, I'm like, oh, this is Ross's part. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And of course,
absolutely.
I played with him for such a long time now. I know, that I can tell, right away. Like, oh, yep, I can automatically tell what's going on. So I understand what you're saying for sure. He definitely has his own thing, which is great. Because a lot of people don't, especially nowadays.
Yeah.
So.
How did you guys get together and start making music? How did you guys end up meeting up? I'm kind of curious how that all started with you guys, with both of you.
Oh God. The short of that long story was we had a couple of common friends, and his buddy's band was opening up for Ross the Boss. And that band didn't have a singer to do those shows. So they asked me to come and do it. And it was all like mostly all covers, like Accept and Queensryche and Priest and stuff. So I was like, yeah, sure, I'll come down. And at that time, I was kind of going through a very transformal part of my life. So I was kind of up for really exploring and doing different things anyway. So sure. I was like, yeah, I'll come down to Long Island. Maybe it'll help open up, some other areas of that I, wasn't common to, and play in front of new people. So I did the show, and, we did it. I didn't know that they were having problems with the people that they were playing with at the time. And I was approached, and I was like, I didn't think of anything of it at first. And I was just like, yeah, sure. They're like, oh, do you have your passport? And I'm like, yeah, I didn't. Do you know all the Manowar stuff? Oh, yeah, but I didn't. But I just kind of was just like, going with the flow, fake it till you make it thing, and not realizing that, hey, here's the gig. We're going to leave for Mexico in a couple of weeks. What? I'm like, oh, shit. Luckily at the time, it was easy to get passports quick, and teleprompting the tunes, basically, phoning them in. So that's kind of how that worked, and that was a learn on the job, trial by fire type thing. And, Ross gave me a chance, and I'm eternally grateful for that. And we just built it from there. And then we started to work on material together. Doing the Blood by Bloodsworn album was a little bit different because, a lot of the stuff was already kind of in the process. So I kind of jumped on while that was going on, even, and got as much as I could into the influence of that record. Whereas Born of Fire, I was on board from note number one and had a lot more influence on that record,
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is that Manowar stuff, let's be honest, that stuff is not easy to sing. And,
no.
You have you definitely have the vocal range to do that. And when you first joined the band and had to go on stage and actually sing those songs, what was that like for you? Because, the Ross the Boss era of Manowar is amazing. And the thing is, Eric Adams as a singer, I mean, he's got a set of pipes on him. Even like when you watch him, if you see him live, like on YouTube and stuff, I think he's almost in what 70s now.
Dude, he's a fucking man, dude.
He could still sing pretty well. And talk about having to go on stage and live up to that.
At first, like I think the biggest lesson I learned is you never imitate. Never try to imitate. You're never gonna do it, because those guys, across the spectrum, the reason these singers are iconic is because it's them. They have a tone, they have a body tone, they have a thing that they do that's their own. Mm-hmm. And you could try to study till your cows come home, and you're never going to get it because you're not them. Your sound is defined by who you are, and you can have, there's going to be people that are going to sing the notes and maybe have a tonal quality. There's a lot of bands out there, without naming names, that, their singers sound a lot like the people that they're coming in to replace or whatever. But even so, they still are not them because they're not them. There's a real thing. I mean, just to nail it on a lot of people don't understand, like the shape of your skull. The size of your body is a resonance center. These things make those people different. And that's just what it is. That's why it's like, it's crazy. You can have a similar style and be like, oh, wow, it sounds like that, but it's never going to be. And I know for a fact that, I don't sound anything like those people. No. And it's like, well, why am I going to bother? I mean, let me go and respect the vibe of the song, the material, and the legacy of what's going on here. And hit the notes, hit the money shots best as possible, and just go out there and do due diligence of the song and the spirit of the song, Yeah. And it's really the only way I feel you could approach it,
Yeah.
So,
and it's interesting because, when you look at like Manowar fans, they're pretty diehard on that, that music. And the thing is, I remember when Ross was putting out these solo albums, when you go online, because, you go on social media, there are a lot of people who are like, man, Mark can really sing these songs, these old Manowar songs. And the thing is, how critical a lot of metal fans can be. They're like, oh, that sounds nothing like Eric Adams. But you didn't hear that. You heard a lot of people Mark does. I mean, it wasn't overly bad, right?
No.
mostly positive, and people are like, this guy can really make these songs sound good. And that's something that's really hard to do, to earn the respect of a lot of fans that grew up with that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, and the thing, you know, I always tell everybody, for me personally, I'm always a fan first. You know, I come into this business on this level late. So I've been a fan forever. I mean, Eric Adams and David Wayne and Jeff Tate and Halford, all the classics. I mean, that's the stuff that I have been a fan of, you know?
Sure.
So to come in and have to do these things, there's a part of me that's like, fuck, as a fan, like, how the, you know, you're never gonna be like that. Mm-hmm. But then the other part of me now having to do it, it's like, look, it's like, you know, you have your own identifier. I've come into my own as a singer and have my own sound. And all I can do is do what I do to pay tribute to these great songs that I have to sing. Mm-hmm. That's the only way that I could look at it. You know what I mean? And hopefully people like the way that we interpret these songs now, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And as a fan, I totally get it. You know, you want to do this music justice because you grew up with it. It influenced you, and you have a profound respect for the artists that basically created it. So, you know, when you're a fan and you start doing this kind of stuff, you have that's like a little bit of extra motivation to really get better at what you're doing. And I think, and I think you've done a phenomenal job on these albums and going from there. So I'm going to go straight to the next segment of this. We're going to talk about Metal Church for a minute. Now, for those people that listen to my radio show and, of course, watch the podcast, which I just moved here to YouTube, I did a video on that. And the thing was, I'll be honest with you, when Mike Howe passed away, I figured that was it. Right.
Me too.
and you know, and I figured that was it. And then all of a sudden, out of left field, you know, they announced you as a singer. And then, like, you know, at first I was like, at the very beginning, I'm like, Marc Lopes from Rasta Boss. And then I thought about it, and it took me about 5 seconds to realize, like, you were like the perfect fit for that band, because I think it was unexpected, because I don't think anybody expected them to continue on. Right. And, you know, when I went back, you know, when I went and thought about it, I'm thinking, man, this guy can hit a lot of high notes. You can definitely have that grittier part of your vocal style that really will fit Metal Church perfectly. And as soon as the first song came out, man, it was like, it reminded me of like David Wayne meets like Halford, because you got some high notes in there. You definitely have that lower end of the vocal spectrum in there, like Metal Church is known for, and it really sounded great. And I got to be honest, I wasn't expecting it. And, you know, this is no disrespect to you, but I didn't expect them to pick you to do that. But then when you think about it, it makes a lot of sense. And I'm like, I got to record a video on this, because this is going to be cool. And I really wasn't disappointed with the song. I cannot wait to hear that album.
Oh, thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah, we put a lot of work into this record.
Yeah,
a lot of work. You know, so, a lot of conversations. I think for like a whole year, I think I talked to Kurt like every day.
Yeah,
you know, and we talked every detail. I mean, it's wild. I mean, we really put a lot of work into the record, and, you know, with nothing but love and respect to the legacy of the band. And I told Kurt straight from the beginning that, like, all I wanted to make sure was that I wanted to make sure that this, if we were going to ride out to the sunset with the band, you know, that we did it with nothing but love and respect, and try to leave on the highest. If you're going to leave, I'm not saying anybody's leaving, don't misconstrue that, but I'm just saying, if you're going to go, you know, it would go out on a high note, you know, and it was great because I talked to him about all this stuff as a fan.
Yeah.
You know, and I was like, you know, if we're going to do this, we got to fucking come out and smash everybody in the face. And I said, we can't come out with a fucking limp fist.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if we're going to do this, let's fucking do this. That's it. I said, we're going to go out there bigger, badder, try to top everything that we possibly can do on every level. Because if not, what's the point?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you're coming out after such a tragic thing, but now you have a second legacy that's gone now. You know what I mean? That's it. That era of the band is gone.
Yeah.
So if you're going to make a new era of the band and not be just a ghost of yourself and keep being relevant and keep moving forward, we got to do this. We just got to go through it. And I was never been so determined, I'm like, we have to slam this. I mean, we wrote all new material, and we, the conversations were in depth, and we really worked hard on, and it had to be organic too. It couldn't be fake. You can't fake it. You couldn't fake it. It had to be real, and it is. And that's why it took as long as it did, because it had to be real, and it had to be that, because that's what it's all about, and you could have just, probably could have came out with something a lot sooner if we would have just, did this, and this, but it wouldn't have been right, and Kurt is too much of an artist as much as I am to do that. I personally wasn't going to allow it of myself, and Kurt wasn't either. And it was great to be we worked so flawlessly together, and he let me write every song. He's never done that. I wrote every song with him, all the vocals, all the lyrics, everything.
Yeah.
And I couldn't believe it, because I remember we were like on the fourth or fifth song, and I'm thinking, he'll take the rest. And he's like, nah, man, keep going. And I'm like, okay, shit. Okay. And then it was one, and it was like, just do the rest. And I'm like, okay. And I was like, fuck, I'm like, oh, wow, I wasn't expecting this, and it was great. And that's why it's me, you know what I mean? He let me be me and add that element to this era of the band to be authentic and like not true. He wasn't going, all right, I need you to sound like Mike Howe on this and David Wayne and Ronnie on this, and nothing of that. Just, he was like, do what you do. And that's what he said. You know what I mean? And it was obviously there was some stuff that we were doing, and we're trying some, maybe go a little bit out of the spectrum. And at first we were like, oh, wow, that's cool. And we're like, nah, maybe we'll go, we'll go back and we'll try this instead, Although there's a couple of things. There's one song on this record that all of us are super fucking psyched for. We hope that everybody likes it. I always said, I'm like, what could we do? Like, what would be like a modern concept of like something like a Watch the Children Pray? Because you're not going to do another one because you already have it, right?
Yeah.
So I'm like, all right, well, what could we do that could be that kind of vibe? Very haunting, and intense and that thing. And we came up with this tune called Me the Nothing, and it has piano in it. Very oddly weird piano, and we did some stuff that never been done on Metal Church Records, but it works, and we're very proud of that tune. I hope people like it. It's wild. It's a really good song, and the concept of it is wild, and it's a real record. We really put a lot of work into it, and we're very, very proud of it. And we're glad that so far people have opened it with more than we ever expected. We were talking to each other. We're like, I can't believe that many people. Is this fake news or something? We're like, really this many people like this shit? This is crazy, So. Yeah. We're very grateful. I'm glad that everybody likes it, So
the response to the original podcast I did about that, I'm going to be honest with you, without anybody hearing anything, people were like commenting, liking it. I was getting more messages about that than I was about some of the interviews, and some of the interviews that I did were some pretty well-known bands, and just listening to you talk about this, like wanting to make the biggest, baddest thing, punch people in the face, whatever. Like if I'm Kurt Vanderhoof and I'm listening to that, I am like automatically motivated. Like, let's do this. And to be honest with you, I understand why he would let you write the songs with him, because you have that drive and determination to really want to make the record as good as it can possibly be. And on top of it, you are a fan of the band and you know what the legacy of the band means to a lot of people. So if I'm a musician, so if I'm Kurt and I'm sitting there and I'm writing with somebody like yourself, I'm like, this guy's motivated, man. Let's just let him help take the reins. Let's do this together. And that's probably what's made this album probably going to sound as good as it is. And that's the mentality that I'm thinking of. I mean, I don't know Kurt, so I can't tell you what's in his head. But if it were me listening to that and I were him, you'd be helping me write every song just because of that factor.
Yeah, it's great too because Kurt is such an amazing, awesome human, and he's so like chill, you know. And I'm a spaz.
Yeah,
you know, it's kind of like it's wild. It's like oil and water, you know, in all the best ways. And yeah, I could see that. You know, he must have been like, "Oh my God, this kid's enthusiasm is off the fucking charts," you know.
yeah.
And like, we just kept going. I mean, the title track is the heaviest thing they've ever done. Heaviest thing. I can't wait for people to hear that one. That's the heaviest song they've ever done. I remember when we were finished, I was like, "Oh man, they're not gonna know what the fuck hit them with this one." You know, it's like super proud. I was like, "Yes." You know, I've left my mark, you know, no pun intended.
So whose idea was it for you to join the band? Did he approach you, and how did that whole situation come about?
It was Stet and Steve.
Okay.
I have known Stet for years prior, and I got to know Steve over the last years because he was a fan of my work, and he came out to some Ross shows, and we got to be friends that way.
Yeah.
And I got them their touring sound guy because he was ours, and he was a really good friend of mine. So kind of became like a little bit of a, you know, like the family started there, you know.
Sure.
And for the first thing that happened was that I got they had asked me if there was scenarios that possibly they had some shows that Mike wasn't going to be able to do, and they asked if I would be willing to come and do the shows if that were, you know, if that happened, that situation came up. And of course I was like, yeah, you know, I'll definitely come do it. You know, that was a long time ago and that never happened. So that's kind of how it first got on the radar, you know, and it's weird. The funny story is that I was with Malaya Rage for a little bit. Okay. And Malaya Rage played with Metal Church a lot back in the day. And I remember Tony always telling me, "Dude, you would be perfect in Metal Church." And I was always like, yeah, whatever, you know, that ain't never going to happen. You know, I was like, that ain't never going to happen, you know, whatever. And then obviously when the whole thing with Mike happened, I was like, what the fuck? And especially because I deal with mental health issues myself, I felt really, it hit me because I've been close to that scenario myself, and it really touched a spot. And I remember when I heard about it, my stomach sank. Literally, I was like, "Oh my God!" I'm like, "What the fuck?" I'm like, "That's horrible." And I'm like, in the back of my mind, I'm like, "There's no fucking, you know, they're not going to carry on. I mean, this is terrible." Mm-hmm. You know, and I remember talking to Stet and saying, "Hey, I'm looking," you know, they were fucked up, you know, and I was like, "Oh man," I'm like, "This is," I don't, you know, didn't think anything of it. I was like, the band's done, you know, they're going to leave on a high note with the last record, which was great, and that'll be it. And then months later, I got a call, "Would you be interested?" And at first I was like, "What?"
Yeah.
This is kind of weird. You know, I didn't feel, I was uncomfortable at first. Like, you know, I just was like, I don't know if I feel weird about doing that, you know? And, you know, after some conversations, I was like, well, you know, let's see what happens. Let's give it a shot. I don't know. Can I do it? Maybe. I don't know. I really wasn't sure, you know? One thing led to another. We did a couple of Metal Church tunes, and, you know, I got to working with Kurt, and then we started doing a couple of original tunes. It was a long process. You know, it wasn't like something that happened right away. And then finally, when it happened, you know, we started working on the record, and they asked me to join. And I said, yeah. And we had to keep it secret because we didn't want anybody to have any preconceived ideas. We just didn't want any of that. We didn't want anything to interfere with what we were doing because we wanted to make the record authentically, like I said. So that's why I believe, honestly, the record. And let me just say this record was not easy to finish. We ran into the craziest. There were files lost. There were hurricanes. You name it. There's some wild shit that happened, which we'll go into detail down the road at another time when I can talk more about it. But it was definitely an album that did not go together as easy as one would think.
Yeah.
But it's there and it was worth it, and we're very happy with it. But it was a hard record to do. And that's okay. I think that's what makes it what it is because it was very hard fought to complete.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? For one reason or another,
Well, the motivation that you had, I don't think anything was going to stop you.
No,
So,
not me, man. I had to play some pivotal roles in getting the record finished. Let's just leave it at that.
yeah, sure.
We're finishing this fucking thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's great to hear how positive the vibe that I ended up getting. From the moment that I heard that this was announced, I had nothing but this positive vibe because I was this fan that was just bummed out. I mean, I had Mike Howe on my show twice. I actually met him. And, when that happened, it was unexpected. When I first saw that, I look at my phone, I saw that pop up, and when I looked at that, I was like shocked. Like I didn't know how to even react. It was like one of those shocked things that you don't know how to react to because you don't expect it.
Right.
And then I thought, man, this band was on this upward trajectory of what they were doing. And then that happens. And then, and I think of myself in the shoes of the guys in the band, like, how is this going to affect them? I thought the band, like I said, the band was done. Right.
Yeah, me too.
And as a fan, I would have been okay with that because I would have understood.
Yeah.
And that's why when they announced you, it was so unexpected to me. And ever since that announcement, I just had nothing but positive vibes about you in the band. Now, speaking to you, I have even more positive vibes because of how motivated you were to make the record good. And I think that is absolutely a great thing.
Oh, yeah. I mean, like I said, I was like, I wouldn't say stipulations, but there was definitely things that had to be talked about before I agreed to do it because I don't do anything half-hearted. That's one thing about me. If I'm not into it, I'm not into it. Right. And I'm not one of these people. I mean, I've been offered other big gigs. I'm going to be honest. I've been offered other things that have been on stuff. And I've been like, nah, I can't sing that every night. I'm not into it. I was like, I respect and I love that. But as a person, for me, I can't do it because if I wouldn't be after a couple of days, I'd be like, I don't want to do this no more. So rather than, you could have took this and you could have took that and it would have been great, but I'm not that kind of person, especially at this point in my life. I don't have time to waste.
Right.
And if I'm not 1,100% behind it, I'm not doing it. That's just, I'm not saying because I'm special or anything like that. It's just, that's how I feel. I don't do anything in my life that I'm not into. And that's just how I live. And that was the thing. I was like, I was like, there was a bunch of material that was written for Mike that didn't fit me. It did not fit me. And I'm like, it took a lot for me to go, Kurt, I really, I don't think this is going to work for me. And after working with him for a little bit, he was like, yeah, this isn't you. This isn't for you. We're going to have to go back and we're going to have to go back to the roots. And when he said that, I was like, I'm in. I'm in 100% if we're going back to the roots. Cause for me, that's where I laid, and I'm like, oh yeah, we got to go back to the roots and let's fucking do this. I'm like, let's fucking come out, hit it like a ton of bricks, motherfucker.
I like the fact you threw that in there, by the way.
Yeah, right.
Ton of bricks.
And, so then it was game on. And then it was like, oh shit, now I got to write all this, but believe it or not, it came, it was very organic, once once you focus and plugged into that mechanism that is Metal Church, that's all I did. I mean, I was still doing Ross the Boss stuff, which was wild. We're doing all these crazy shows and stuff, and no one knew. I couldn't even tell them for a long time. So I was doing that, but my brain and everything was so honed into this record. I was going, and then I was recording, and I was going. I had to keep switching phases, and it was crazy, but yeah, it was awesome. You know what I mean? That's what made this record so like real. You know what I mean?
Yeah, my first impression. So when I heard the song, obviously the song's pretty heavy, but when I heard you singing, I kept. In fact, when I first heard the announcement of you singing, all I could think about was how good you will sound live singing songs from the Dark album, from that album, because it just, your voice just like fits those songs like really, really well. Almost, and it's almost kind of scary. Right. and that was my first thought. Like, man, I could hear him doing Ton of Bricks. I could hear him doing, Watch the Children Pray. I can hear him doing a lot of these songs and making them sound amazing live.
Thanks. Yeah. The set list is good.
Yeah. Well, I'm not going to ask you about that.
No, I can't give that out, but it's good. We'll
do that as a surprise. The one thing I've always liked about Metal Church is I've seen them twice. Recently, the last few years, and these guys, they're really cool dudes. Every show I went to, they waited at the end of the show and just talked to everybody.
Yeah, they're great.
That was something that really, in my opinion, really struck, really not struck a nerve, but really really made me give mad respect to them for that, because they truly appreciated people showing up, people getting into that, taking pictures with everybody. And, that's one thing I've always loved about that band.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, that's great. I mean, I take pride in doing that myself with Ross. I'm always game for that stuff because I'm so appreciative of everybody to be there. Cause it's sometimes these old jaded players, they forget why they're there in the first place. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? It's us, the fan, that keeps them relevant. You know what I mean? And you can't forget that. That's the most important thing ever, no matter how tired or whatever the case may be. And it's very understandable, but that 1 minute of your time could mean a million things to somebody. And to me, that's really important. It's just as important as the performance part of it, Yeah.
I've always looked at it because, a lot of, I can't remember what band it was, but, one important thing he did bring up to me is he was talking about how a lot of people that go to these shows are spending literally like the last dollar they have to come see you. And with those ticket prices going up and the cost of touring going way up, I did a whole show on how bad bands are getting screwed on tour right now, which is another story. But talking about how some people will save up their money for like a couple months just to be able to come see you. And, they were talking about that. And that's why they have such an appreciation for people that do come out and see them. And even nowadays, because, all these people took years off because of the pandemic from touring, right? Everybody went out at once. So you have all these bands and if you only have so much money, you're like, okay, who am I going to go see? And for them to come pick you to come see them. I mean, it's, a band like Metal Church, I don't see having any shortage of people wanting to see them because of how fan friendly they've always been.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, it's great. I've had to deal with a lot of, the Manowar fans, and I get it. They're very passionate about their stuff. And, so, there's definitely been the trials and tribulations with that, but the Metal Church fans have been freaking amazing. Yeah. I mean, they've welcomed me with open arms, and like, I gotta be honest, like these first shows, I'm so fucking nervous. Like I get like, I tell my girlfriend, you have to come to the first shows because I'm going to need some fucking moral support for this. I mean, obviously I wanted there anyways, but it's just like, I need, I'm really, I mean, not because I can't do it or anything like that, but it's just, the anticipation, and I get it as a fan. Like I can totally flip the coin and go, I want to see this, and I get it. And I just want people to have fun and enjoy the material. And, I just want to be able to go out there and it's great that everybody's very open and welcome to the whole thing, And I mean, hey, we're going to give it 100,000% and give you the best possible thing that we can do. You know what I mean? I'm going to be honest. I mean, first the show, there won't be without error. You know what I mean? But it's just like anything else. It's a whole new machine. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's gonna be great. It's gonna be amazing. And it's gonna be, everybody, the family vibe of the whole band is already amazing. So I can't even wait to step out on stage with everybody. And me and Steph were laughing because we've known each other for so many years. We've never played together. So the first time that we get to play together is going to be the first Melchor show, which is totally wacky. I was like, oh, boy, we always wanted to play together, but never thought it would be like this. You know what I mean? So you're going to see some big smiles on that stage. It's for sure,
Well, as a singer, and I'm sure you know this, once you get into that first song and you get the adrenaline going, you almost kind of forget about being nervous. It's like when you go on stage and you're like, man, I'm getting nervous. I'm getting nervous. And then all of a sudden you get like a minute into the first song, you get to the middle of the song, you feel the vibe, it's all over. And I think what makes that probably a little easier for you is the fact that everybody is excited. Everybody is embracing you without hearing anything, without even with only hearing one song. Everybody is excited for you to be in the band. I know I am, and I know so many other people. Like I think this is one of the only times I've ever seen like somebody announced as a replacement where I don't really see any negative comments at it.
Dude, that freaked me out.
Yeah, exactly.
I was like, I remember when the first song came out, I was on a flight and I had really bad internet thing, right? And my girlfriend's like texting me responses because I was like, oh my God, I'm like, I don't know if I want to look. And I would, like anything else, it's like, I wonder what people are going to think. She's like, oh my God, they're loving it. And I'm like, for real? She's like, yeah, man, there's no bad responses yet. I'm like, well, give it an hour, like, she's like, nope, it's good. It's good. And I'm like, wow, this is really weird. And then like, I finally landed, I get to my room and I'm like looking and I'm like, wow, okay, people are really liking this. And I'm like, okay, well, that's great. Well, what can I say? Thanks. What I mean? I don't want to let anybody down. I just want to make sure that we, I want to do the legacy proud, more than anything. And as a fan,
as a fan, man, how much of a rarity it is. I don't think I've ever, like I said, I've never seen that where like, I was expecting like when I recorded my podcast, for example, I was expecting, maybe a couple negative comments here. There was like nothing. Like everybody's like, dude, this is great. This is great that this guy's in the band. And you going on social media and there's like no haters. Right. Yeah, and that's, how rare that is in any music scene. You replace a singer. That's usually the most contentious thing ever.
Right.
Like if it was a guitar player or a drummer, most people, nothing against people that play those instruments, but usually the singer causes the most controversy, and there was like none. Like it was like Marc Lopes is like universally accepted as the new singer of Metal Church.
Yeah, go figure.
Yeah, so that is cool, man.
Yeah, well, anyway, it's pretty wild. Pretty wild, because I'm really good friends with Todd and Ripper, and I was like, how do I navigate this? And they were like, they gave me their versions of the story. And I personally love both of them guys.
Yeah, they're cool.
And I was, and they were just, they were like this and that. And I was like, so I was ready. I'm like, oh yeah, put on the coat of armor because here it comes, So a happy surprise. And, I hope it stays that way. I hope everybody likes the whole album and the shows. And, we're just going to keep it going. At least it's a good start, So I hope we keep the ball rolling in that direction,
Yeah, I don't really know Todd that well, but Ripper's from my area. He's a really cool dude. Definitely one of my favorite people in the scene. And, after meeting him and interviewing him before, just a straight up, the thing I like about Rip Owens, to be honest with you, is he is just a very straightforward, down to earth guy. right? I mean, like when you see him on stage and, you know, he goes on stage, he gives it 110%, but he's just a straight up down to earth dude. Like as if he's from Ohio. You know, a lot of us are kind of like that. But
it's like us mass holes over here. We're the same way. We shoot from the hip, baby. If you can't take it, then carry on.
but very cool dude. But you know, I almost feel that the experiences from those guys might be a little different because of the situation, right? I mean, like to me, Ripper was the ideal guy for Priest in the 90s because of the fact that he had a little bit of a harsher voice. And they were going into that musical direction, right?
Right.
But he didn't replace anybody from a band that people thought would be broken up forever. You know, I think there was a little bit of a different situation. But, you know, for guys like Todd LaTorre, I'm assuming that's who you're talking about.
Yes.
And Ripper, they had to walk into some situations and had to deal with a lot of backlash from fans that automatically didn't want to accept them from the get-go. You know, and I think for them, it was a little bit different, you know, and Ripper to me is a guy too that has never really gotten as much credit as he's deserved.
You know? Like I got to, like I've, you know, obviously as a fan at first, and then I got to get to know him, and I've known him for a while, and you know, he's gonna laugh if he sees this because I never really fanboy out, but I really like the stuff that he did with Chad Walls of Damned. I mean, dude, I've ripped a lot of his shit off because I fucking love what he does with his voice because it's that combination of aggression, but high and you know, huge influence of mine. I fucking love his voice. You know? Man, I always was like, man, why isn't he this? He should be in. This should be bigger. You know what I mean? I never understood. I was like, what the fuck? You know, I mean, this guy fucking kills 90% of everybody out there. You know, and Todd's amazing too. You know, and Todd, you know, Todd got unnecessary hate, you know, and I mean, I've always have been a Jeff Tate fan. You know, I love Jeff Tate. That resonance in his voice will never be replaced. No matter what. Again, what we're talking about, you can't do that. You have to be yourself. Todd's amazing. You know what I mean? But he definitely went through fucking hell with that stuff. But that had nothing to do with him. It was because of the circumstances, like you said, with the band. It was a fucking nightmare. Yeah.
Well, that whole Queensryche situation was really kind of a very bad thing, you know. And I think those guys, the problem is, I don't think those guys get as much, you know, credit as they deserve. I mean, like you go and listen to, for example, like the last Ripper EP that came out, the new one. I mean, that thing is unbelievable.
Oh, it's fucking great.
Or the Three Tremors stuff. Or, you know, stuff he was doing, Charred Walls of the Damned. I'm glad he brought that up because I almost forgot about those albums, you know, and his voice. Yeah. I mean, the guy just, you know, people still will see him. Oh, he's the guy that replaced Halford, and it automatically just won't like the dude for whatever reason.
Yeah, I don't understand that. Yeah.
And I get that because people that listen to the radio show would call me and be like, I can't believe that guy's terrible. I'm like, are you kidding me? Right. You know, and you know, I'm a fan too. I'm somebody that has always said I like Ripper's post-Priest work than what he did with them. You know, I think he made his mark with them. But when I hear stuff, you know, the other album I love by him, Beyond Fear, was another great record. A lot of people forget about that. And you know, he didn't get as much. He doesn't really, still even to this day, doesn't get as much credit as he deserves. That's my opinion.
Yeah, you know, I mean, the thing that's funny is like, I mean, his voice. To this day, he sounds better now than he ever has. Yeah. And you know, he's got a real good health regimen going on. And, you know, anybody that knows me, I'm really into that. So I've been cheering him along the whole way, you know, and it's like, it's stupid. I'm like, dude, and, you know, and no offense to any, you know, there's singers that are more noted than him out there that don't sound half as good. You know what I mean? You know, but I mean, it's a weird thing. I mean, it's the nature of the beast. I mean, I find that I do, like, even for me personally, I find it kind of interesting that, like, sometimes I get approached about things now that aren't really any different than what I've been doing for the last 5 years or something. And then all of a sudden it matters. And I'm like, okay, cool, I guess, you know, because of the situation that I'm in and more high profile, which is great. And I love it, but I can't help but inside chuckle. I was like, wow, where were you 3 years ago? You know, you know, so I understand that whole, you know, that whole thing. So, but you know what, man, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter. all that matters is that, for me, I'm happy with what I've done. I'm happy with what I do. I'm proud of everything that I'm doing with everybody that I'm working with. I know personally that I give it everything I possibly can. And if someone doesn't like it, it used to bother me. Now I'm like, look, you have two choices. You can listen to it and bitch and waste your time, or just move on. Mm-hmm. And why do you want to waste your time? Go listen to something you like.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's, you want to hear Metal Church, go listen to the fucking albums you like. Same thing with all these other people. It's like, oh, you want to go. Like, oh, how come Maiden doesn't make another Number of the Beast? Well, go listen to Number of the Beast. And if you don't like what we're doing, then move on. I mean, if we listen to these things, then we're never gonna carry on ourselves. And who's got time for that anymore? Life's too precious now. We just move on. Let's go. You know what I mean? That's how I look at it. If you don't like it, hey, I'm sorry. I wish you did. But go listen to something you like.
One of my favorite quotes was from Charlie Benante of Anthrax when people were talking and complaining about the Pantera reunion. His exact words was, "Don't come."
Yeah, dude. And I mean, it's a perfect example. I've seen the original Pantera lineup like 45 times.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Is it Pantera? No, of course not. But I mean, I get why they're doing it. You know what I mean? And again, you don't like it, don't go to it.
Uh-huh.
But there's a lot of people out there that it actually means something to them to at least see this aspect of it. And that's awesome. That's awesome. You know what I mean? Well, let them enjoy it. Like you said, if you don't want to go, then don't fucking go. You know what I mean? No one's telling you to do it.
That's like that no nonsense, like Italian American take on it. Cause I'm half Italian, right? So that's just how our people are. We just no nonsense about it. And I totally get it. I saw Pantera when I was in high school. I grew up when they were in their prime, and you're never going to have it. But the guys that they have doing it, like with Zach and those guys, they were friends with the band.
Right.
I think the right intentions are there. They're going to do justice to the music. This is the closest thing that a lot of the younger kids now are going to have to be able to see that. And I did a whole video on this, which actually got some people mad at me. But I said, the other important thing about that whole reunion thing, one of the most important things is the singer. I mean, how many bands do people go out and see with one original member left from whatever era, right? Yeah. So you got the singer.
Yeah, look at Metal Church. You got one guy.
Right, exactly. That's my point. Exactly. Yeah. So, but I get where you're coming from on it. Mark, I'm really fired up and really excited for this Metal Church album. To be honest with you, this is something that really, as a music fan, really was a positive thing for me. Because, I was bummed out about Metal Church. I sort of forgot about the fact that they had broken up, and then knowing that you were in the band and they were coming out with an album, I can tell you that made my day when I heard it.
Thanks. Well, I'm glad. That's awesome to hear, man. I like I said, I hope I don't let anybody down. I'm just going to do the best that I possibly can. Trust me. Give it everything. I give it everything, man.
I don't think that's going to happen. So, but anyway, we'll end it off here. I'm gonna give you one last question. I end off my interviews with everybody like this. Any last words for any fans? Anybody that's a fan of you, Metal Church, Ross the Boss, or whatever that you want to say to people before we end this off?
All I want to say is thanks. Thanks for all the support, the kind words, and giving it a chance on all levels of things. And I just hope that we can keep everybody, make everybody happy when they go to the shows and listening to the music and get the enjoyment out of it and the vibe that we go for, and to make it pleasant for people to check out and escape. We hope that the escape is good, because that's really what it's about. It's a journey. We put our music on, and it's a journey to get away. And then hopefully these things that I do help with that journey, and and if it does, thanks for having me along for the ride,